Hello, everyone. On behalf of the East Brunswick Public Library, it's my pleasure to welcome you to panel 2 of our second annual New Jersey Local Authors Day. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to those of you attending virtually, and thank you to programming librarian Melissa Hosick for planning and running this event. My name is Teresa Agostinelli. My pronouns are she, her, and I will be serving as your host for this panel and for the other panels today. As a reminder, our panelists' books will be for sale at the tables in the back, and you can also speak to our panelists between and during events. So during the first part of this panel, for about the first 20 minutes, I will be asking questions, and then I'm going to open up questions to the group, the audience here in person, and also we'll be monitoring the chat and social media, and we'll be asking those questions as well. I would like everyone to please turn off or silence your phone at this time, and also to quiet your conversation so we can get started. So our panel right now features authors for children and the people who love them. And it's my privilege to introduce our 3 panelists. I have Amar directly to my left. We have Katie Germain with the B theme. And we have Kelly Russell Jaques is at the very end. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. So before we start with questions, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to share information about their websites and social media handles.
Hi, I am Amar, and my real name is Rama. It's the palindrome. My social media handle is Amar the Author. I'm with the same handle on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Katie. My Instagram is at honeybees hive with 2 underscores, and my website is thehoneybeebooks.com.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm on Instagram as Kelly Russell Jaques, and I am on X, formerly Twitter, as Kelly Russell JA1.
Okay, thank you. So our first question is, what inspired you to become a children's author? And do you write for other genres as well? We're going to stick with Kelly, and we're going to move this way.
Well, I've always loved to read, not surprisingly, and I've always loved to write. And so, and I think children, the ages like 4, 5, and 6 to me is just like a magical time where they are very funny and open, and they don't have any filter. And I just love that age. And I wanted to write something for them that would make them laugh. But also I wanted to have something for the parents to enjoy as well. So you have to keep both markets in mind when you're writing a picture book.
So right now, I currently only write for the genre of children's books. However, the content I put out on Instagram, online, and the work that I do professionally is for maternal health and for families.
I predominantly write only children's books. In fact, this is my first time writing children's books. I do share my thoughts on Facebook, LinkedIn, because I do write professional technology-related topics.
Thank you. So I was wondering, I know that you are all moms, and my question is, do you have authors that you read for inspiration? And I know that when my kids were younger, I'd read out loud to them and often read books together. Were there authors at the time that you read and you're like, oh, they've inspired me? Or maybe there was a gap in what was available for you to read out loud or read to them. So how would you answer that question? Actually, we're going to start here and move this way.
Thank you. I used to read to both my children. They are now teenagers. I had a lot of fun reading Curious George. So I've always seen HRA, and the works were so engaging. It talks about how a naughty monkey can impart a valuable lesson. That was something that I've always enjoyed reading to my children. The other book the other author that I really enjoyed is Vera Rosenberry. There are so many stories where she talks about going to school or having a conflict. How do you navigate around a conflict and so on? Those are some of the inspirations that I have taken in my works.
Thank you.
So the children's book series that I am most inspired by is the Bernstein Bears, a very popular series from when I was growing up, and I think possibly still popular today, a pretty timeless collection of books. So my biggest hope and aspiration for the honeybees is that they become this generation's Bernstein Bears. And the reason I've put out to create this series is to really identify the gap in children's literature where we are not addressing health and wellness for parents and families. So I too read to my children most nights out of the week, and there are phenomenal books out there right now on mental hygiene and wellness for kids. They're fantastic messages. But where the honeybees come in is to say, well, if we are not living in an environment where the adults in our lives are also able to model and carry over these strategies, how well are kids really going to be able to integrate them? So that's where the honeybees come in to provide dual lessons here for moms, for parents, and for kids.
There's so many picture books that I loved and love still. The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton and Goodnight Moon and Where the Wild Things Are. I mean, they're classics for a reason. They're timeless. And that's what you hope for when you're writing, is that you can replicate something like that people will enjoy for years to come.
Thank you. So I know that each of you, in addition to being writers, you have full lives working as moms and running families and positions other than writing. So how does your family and work affect your writing? And I'd like you to start with Kelly, and we're going to work back this way.
So I have 3 children, and they are all grown now, though I have a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old and a 24-year-old. So while they were growing up, I would always just write down little notes and little ideas that I might have. And once they started getting older and more independent and being able to drive, it freed up some time for me. I also used to work in a special needs preschool and kindergarten. And, the things the kids would say were just, so funny, and it would just spark something. And so I get my ideas that way. I do work at Rutgers right now, and but it's part-time, so it does free me up to have time to write. But that's the beauty of writing, is it doesn't matter how old you are. You can do it forever. So that's one of the things I love about it.
Sure. So I am currently a mom to 2 little boys who are 6 and 3, and I work full-time as an occupational therapist. So a lot of the writing that I do is completely inspired by my current home and professional life. The series alone, The Honeybees, came from a nickname that my 2 little boys give me. And both of my stories that are out right now are real life stories that come from home, strategies that we use, things that kind of came out spontaneously. And when the strategies worked, I said, wow, this is great. Let me put pen to paper, and maybe this will help other families too. And professionally, the work that I do working with adults, as well as in the maternal health field, and the professional certifications that I hold there, help me layer in those extra pieces of maternal health, mental health, and the wellness strategies that I put in.
Thank you.
I'm a mom to 21-year-old and a 16-year-old. And I also work full-time. I work as a technologist, and I help build products, which are basically mobile apps or other digital applications. My world of work is sometimes cut and dry, way too black and white. I use inspiration. There are some of the things that need to be conveyed through my work, which needs a creative twist. So I do use those learnings in my writings. And as my children were growing up, they thoroughly enjoyed some of the stories that have a little bit of a lesson built in them. My daughter always used to give me challenges on, Mom, I'm going to give you 2 characters, just make up a story. So she would always challenge me while she was growing up. That's another inspiration. So it's both from work and having to keep up that creative twist, and of course, like having to yield to my daughter's wishes, kind of became my inspiration.
Thank you so much. And actually, that's a perfect segue from my next question. So I know with children's books, in addition to the story, a lot of what grabs your at least initial attention are the different characters that you have on the covers and in the marketing. So I'm going to start with Amara and Workbook. How did you choose the characters for your stories, and also like the settings or hammock or what they're using?
Absolutely. So I've been thinking about how to bring some of the stories as ideas that I had in my head. In a lot of stories, pigs are very friendly and sometimes seen as like cuddly, right? So if I have to give a message, it has to be through animals, is what I thought. Because even if it is a heavy message, there is always a playfulness that I could bring to the story. So that's how Pixie the pig came to existence. Otters, of course, are very friendly, and I've done a little bit of a research on which character to pick. I did conduct some of the market research as well. I asked my neighbors. There is a little bit of a research went into what my other character could be. So Oxy the otter was born that way through a lot of research and so on. Pixie and Oxy are my two main characters.
Thank you.
So, like I shared previously, the concept of the honeybees came from a nickname. My, at the time, 5-year-old just started calling me Honeybee one day. It was absolutely adorable. It stuck. So that's really what inspired the idea. However, like I said, with my books focusing on that realm of maternal wellness, in a beehive, if the queen bee gets sick or isn't doing well, the rest of the hive suffers. And so that mentality brings back to that core message of the stories that as moms, as parents or caregivers, we need to care for ourselves as well for the rest of our hive or our family to function at their best too.
So my idea for this book, Havoc in the Hammock, was I was at my friend Mary and Dan's house, and they have a hammock in their backyard, and there was 5 or 6 kids, and they were swinging, quite fast on this hammock. And I thought, well, that's very precarious. So I went home and wrote the first version of the book. But after I read it to my husband, he said, well, this is very autobiographical. Which is true, because there's a tortoise who climbs into a backyard hammock, and she's just looking for a little peace and quiet, a little rest. And I just thought, well, most parents, caregivers can relate to that feeling of just wanting, a minute to themselves. So that's where the idea for this came from.
Thank you. And sometimes I feel like that even with my teens. And my daughter just came home, and she's away at school, and she came back, and I love seeing her, but I felt like that a little bit with her as well. So, we were talking about the characters, and I think the illustrators really go hand in hand, enhancing the work that you have written. So what is the process with an illustrator being chosen? And do you have a say in how your work is interpreted through the illustrators? So we're going to just work our way back this way.
So my book got picked up by Raycraft, and I had no say in the illustrators at all, and which is it's a little nerve-wracking, frankly. But they picked the twin sisters, Liz and Kate Pope from England, and I got to see what they had done, and I just thought it was wonderful. It was perfect. They had picked up on the tone of the story, and their vision just really matched what I had in my head. And since I am, not artistic at all, it was just such a relief, and I'm so grateful. I feel like they did such a good job. It's very colorful, it's very catchy, and they captured it perfectly.
So I had quite the opposite experience because my books I have put out through self-publishing applications, first through Amazon KDP and then again through Ingram Spark. So I had hired a freelance illustrator who I connected with through Fiverr. Her name is Nardin Hanny, and she is also actually in the United Kingdom. So we had connected online, did some sample work, and I was really pleased with her and Thankfully, I've unfortunately heard some horror stories when it comes to self-publication and connecting with people online. She has been phenomenal. She is also on Instagram at Nardine Habib, Habib, if you want to check out her work. And so we worked together very, very closely from character design, the black and white dummy book, and then the colors. And so it's been really fun now bringing to life the second book and then what will be the third in the series to then have this continuation of the honeybees, the hives, these warm honey elements that are carried throughout.
Yeah, and I took the same path. So I went to Instagram, tried to look for multiple different illustrators. I did go through their portfolios and their work, finally picked a freelance graphic designer who illustrated my series of books for me. Her name is JD, and I took a global theme as well. She lives in Pakistan, and her work has been amazing. Right from day one, the character designs, actually, she went through literally 13 different iterations with me for picking Pixie, and she must have done at least 15 to 17 variations of Oxy. I did have a say in every page of how she illustrated. There have been a number of ideas that she came up with also. So it's an iterative process, quite collaborative. She's open to ideas, and she sometimes, it's funny, she says, Rama, give me one try. Let me take a stab at it, and then we can figure it out. So it's quite a collaborative process.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could each describe your writing process. Do you maintain a set schedule, or do you write when inspiration hits? Are there certain things you like to eat or drink or set up around you when you're writing? So we're going to start with Amar and work this way.
I'm trying to get to a set schedule with my full-time work and also other things. Finding the time has been quite a challenge. What I have been doing is new creations, I reserve it for the weekends. So I'm trying to get to coming up with one page in the story or a part of the story. Any new creations, I reserve it for the weekend. All my editing work pretty much is done on weeknights. That's my winding down, or like getting to find myself some relief. That's the process that I've been finding. In terms of setup, it's just my family room's couch. That's all. That's my place. I'm surrounded by family. We just have a casual conversation. Inspiration hits, and that's how I have been writing.
So because both of my books and the core message and stories have come from very real things and conversations that have happened in my life, I guess I would say I write when inspiration hits. I think the most helpful thing that I've done is opened up a note on my phone, and that when I'm, brushing my teeth, that's when this cute little rhyme comes to my head, and I quickly grab my phone and write it down so that when I do have some time to really sit down and carve things out, I already have this kind of jotted down a couple lines and things that when I can really sit down and put it together, it flows nicely, or things that, might pop into my brain in the middle of the day, I'm not going to remember by the time I get back home. So the process is unstructured, but enjoyable.
My process is also unstructured. There's no specific time. It's when inspiration hits. And, I tend to write little ideas or snippets on Post-it notes. So those are on my nightstand. I find my best ideas actually come like when I'm taking a shower, when I'm walking outside, when I'm not actually thinking about writing. Is something I'll pop in, or I'll like solve a problem in my head. So that's helpful. Another thing that I have found very helpful is I joined SCBWI, which is the Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators. They have great resources. I do have a writing group that we meet on Zoom once a month. That's helpful to get feedback. And I also participate in Story Storm, which you're supposed to try to come up with 30 different ideas in 30 days. That's put on by Tara Lazar, and I find that to be very helpful as well.
Thank you. And for the next question, I had mentioned that I have daughters that are now grown, but I would always appreciate when I was reading to them when the story would appeal to not only the kids, but to the adults. It made it a lot more enjoyable and sometimes I would get different things out of the story than they did, just like some children's movies are like that as well. When you're writing, do you keep that in mind that you're writing for multiple audiences? And is that a conscious decision on your part? We can start here.
Okay. Absolutely. So when I write, I have been thinking about an independent reader, the child himself or herself, and also the parents. Several times, including my own example, there are schedules at home, and I do cater my books for younger audience as well as their parents or caregivers, so they can make sure to have an enjoyable experience. Especially, I'm rewinding back to my children's younger days when we would sit with a book and I would read it loud to my children, and every page either they would make me stop, ask me questions, or we'll have a very nice discussion. So having those examples kind of prompted me to keep my books not just cater only to the younger audience, but also the parents or caregivers who are reading for them. So it promotes a nice dialogue. It kind of paves path for bonding.
Sure. So there is absolutely an intentional duality in my stories. They are meant for children just as much as they are meant for adults. One of the original concepts of this series is to serve as a Cliff Notes or a Spark Notes version of mental health and self-help books for moms and for parents. So the idea being that if you are a very tired mom at the end of the day who really, really wants to get to that book, but you're exhausted and your brain is not really interested in absorbing any more information, but you do carve out the time to read to your little ones at night, by reading the story to your kids at bed, you will still have a quick, tangible soundbite, a strategy that you could use immediately after reading the story. So these books are meant for both audiences. And for anyone who has read or may read Family Teamwork, there are definitely one or two jokes in there that I did need to make sure I get my husband's permission before putting in. So a little bit of humor for both.
So I also try to think of both audiences. So the tortoise in my story is a proxy for every parent and caregiver who's tired and needs a break. The story is a counting, rhyming book, counting up to 10. So that, of course, is for children to learn their numbers. But it's also the animals start off small and they get larger. And so havoc, it grows. And then I like to put, if I can, a little twist in at the end. So that while they start off in a hammock, they end up in a trampoline. So it's nice to have a little twist and just keep something, funny. And there's also a refrain. So if the child wants to chant it along with the caregiver, then that's an option for them.
That always makes it fun. All right. Thank you so much. We're actually out of time for this portion of the panel. And I just want to give a shout out. We have a text, way to go, Katie Ann, from Mickey Curcio. Okay. So if anyone here has questions, so questions from our physical audience as well as our virtual audience are welcome now. So please take this opportunity, this great opportunity to pick their brains, our panelists of children's authors. If you have a question, you can just come up to the mic.
And one of the members there is working on a children's book right now, and she's always asking me for advice, and I never have any. So what would your greatest piece of advice be to someone who is trying to pen a children's book?
So one of the things I was warned against is writing in rhyme, because it is difficult. And then I didn't realize it. I did write it in rhyme anyway, but that's how it came to me. So, but one of the things I didn't realize when I was writing it was that one of the problems with rhyme is that it can't be translated into other languages. So that's actually just something to consider and think about. So, I mean, I think publishers do like rhyme, but there's a reason why it's just not always as,
Right.
universal.
And I think depending on what route your friend is looking to go as far as publication and the process, like I said, I was very fortunate in the people and the groups and my illustrator that I've come across. It's been a very positive experience for me. But with other authors that I have connected with freelance illustrators or connecting with them virtually, I've had some very negative experiences or, not producing work that they said they were going to. So really just making sure if she is doing the vetting process, that there's really credible work there.
One main thing that from a children's book author's perspective is picking the problem to solve, or what is she trying to tell? Is it something, is her story wanting to share a message, or is it more like a fun thing that it's a children's books could be something that relay a message, or it could be just a fun activity to read with either on their own or other people. Figuring that one out is a great start. And then making sure, if she's like Katie said, if she is taking the independent author route versus finding a publisher, that's the next step to get the team of illustrators, because children's books, if you tend to have a great design and a lot of eye-catching color, keeping the simplicity also in mind helps quite a bit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question and for your answers. Okay, we have a couple minutes. Is there anything that you all would like to share that we didn't discuss?
I would like to share a small excerpt from my second book, because my second book is about facing fears and how our main character faced the fear. I'm just going to read out the last excerpt from that book. Pixie thanked Oxy for helping her. She had learned that day not to be afraid, take a brave step, and explore new things. They learned how important it was to try new things, even if they initially seemed scary. With a little bit of help and encouragement, both friends knew that they could do anything. With that, Oxy and Pixie swam off into the sunset, ready for their next adventure. The reason I picked this excerpt is for children, it is very important to understand that it's totally okay to be afraid. It's totally okay to be scared. There is nothing to be ashamed of, right? Because sometimes if I'm scared of dark, or if I'm scared of a little bug, it can be seen as a negative experience. That's the message that I'm trying to give it through this story is it's totally fine. Lean on your friends, get the support, then you can tackle anything.
Love that message for all ages, right?
That's great. No, I think just in conclusion with the information that I shared today, I just want to thank the East Brunswick team today for putting this together and welcoming me to join. And for anyone who may be listening to this information online or later on in the podcast that East Brunswick is putting out, if I'm sitting here today and I can do it, I promise you that you can do it too. I related very much with what a lot of the poets shared about doing things kind of as it came to them and learning as you go. So don't feel intimidated by the process. And if you have an idea that you feel passionate about, put it out in the world.
Thank you. And I see we do have a question here. So
I do have a question. So sort of as you were saying, not to be afraid, a lot of writing is very private. It's quiet work at home. It's intimate work. But being an author is a public position, right? You come out, you do marketing. Can you speak to the challenges or the difference in those two roles, right? From being an author writing quietly, privately, to being an author who's published and now has to market and present and sit on panels. How has your role changed, and how does that feel?
Yeah, I think most writers are introverts, and doing things like a panel or public speaking is terrifying. So it's definitely there's a lot of rejection. So that you have to get used to. So there's a lot of no's before you get your first yes. I feel like there's always a different way to look at a story. So If you have a story like Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill, you can write it from Jill's point of view. If you have Little Red Riding Hood, you could write it from the woodsman point of view or the grandmother's point of view. There's always a different way to tell a story, even if it's a familiar story. So, you have to put yourself out there, even if it scares you.
Sure. So I actually am not someone that really, this is going to sound crazy sitting here, I don't really feel like I even identify myself as a writer. I find myself to be a person who had a story that I wanted to share, and I had the courage to kind of just learn the process as I went and put it out there. So for me, I actually consider myself an extrovert on both fronts. The marketing and the events are probably some of the most enjoyable parts. I love getting out and getting to meet people and see the kids and find new ways to get these messages out there to help kids and to help families. But yeah, if you're someone who is shy, these events might be a little bit overwhelming, but I can promise you that if people are coming out to see you and your story, they're excited to support you. And starting small and starting in your community with some familiar faces is a great way to do it.
From my personal experience, it is quite intimidating to be sitting in front of people and talking. My day job, like for work, this is what I do. I do a lot of presentations, I talk and stand in front of several audience. It's kind of in the DNA per se by now, but still making sure my message resonates with everybody is one of the challenges that I always deal with. But at the same time, there is an excitement with sharing the work that you have created. So that's what fuels me to come in front of everybody, share the books, talk about the stories, and see the reactions, see the questions that are coming up, which also fuels me with new ideas for the next set of stories and so on.
Thank you. And Kelly, would you like to close out with any final words? No pressure.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just, I guess I'll talk just for a second about what I'm working on next. So I did write a story about Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill from Jill's point of view, and Jill uses STEM to build an aqueduct to help bring water to her community. So I try to focus on female empowerment, and I like to tell stories from a different point of view.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you.